Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Yesterday we concluded with starting to make this text more practical. The first 10 verses we went through at length, proving through logic and with the reliance of the Shastra that there is one immutable witness beyond everything I can perceive. Even for my intellect to function in varied ways and grasp complicated concepts, there needs to be that illuminating factor that even allows that to happen. That is that Sakshi Chaitanya. Now, even calling Chaitanya Sakshi is a compromise statement. Only when we're taking this world to be real, we're saying there is something to witness, therefore we attribute that term to the Chaitanya. Without anything from that highest standpoint, even that's a misnomer. Now, this entire process of even attributing these kinds of labels where they aren't there, essentially, that's called adhyaropa. Intentional superimposition, placing these labels there. Which means that next layer to come is apavada, removal of that label. Now we'd ask, how do we remove that label and see everything only from that highest standpoint? That itself is another misunderstanding. As long as I am functioning with this intellect, the inner instrument, with the sense objects of the world and my sense organs, I cannot look at things from that highest standpoint. It's impossible. That will come on its own. All I have to worry about is keep seeing that witnesshood in myself instead of getting bogged down with the changes of this inner instrument. Now, for this 12th shloka here, we take on what seems to be repetitive, but is a very important point to look at. Ahankaram dhiyam sakshi vishayanapi bhasayet ahankaradya bhavepi swayam bhatyeva purvavat. Ahankaram dhyam sakshi. This witness illuminates the ahankara, that intellect. Now, the last part of this shloka is another banger here. Swayam bhati eva purvavat. That even the absence of this ego, this ahankara not existing, that same sakshi illuminates that as well. Why is that so important to see right here? That we said in the very beginning, this triad of jiva, jagat, and ishvara. We said jagat exists because of jiva. Because jiva is there and needs that playground to exhaust my vasanas, therefore the world exists. Chaitanya is not the same way. Even without this jivatva, Chaitanya still exists. It's not that it's the product of anything or reliant on anything else. It is self-luminous. Even in the absence of this ahankara, this entire assembly. Why is that important to know? That if I'm looking at what my true identity is, it must be something that is permanent. Must be a substratum that has no flickering to it. Now, this is a pure Advaitic concept right here. If we take, for example, an ocean and a wave. The wave rises from that water, has this identity of a wave until it crashes down again. In that moment that it's rising and falling, we can distinctly point at it and say, this is a wave. What it comes from is water. What it goes back to is water. Was it ever different from water at any point? We gave it a special name and a form. It's essentially nothing but that water. Similarly, I, as this ahankara, with this individuality and a label and a name and thoughts and deeds and all of this, I give myself that special distinction as long as I last. But once this matter envelopment ends, essentially I go back to that very nature of existence. That's nothing but that Chaitanya. Now, this seems like a basic concept. It clears up so many misconceptions, however. That is it that this consciousness, one consciousness there for every single person? That confusion comes up when we say my Atma like that. The truth is, it's not that there is more than one consciousness. There is only one with mani gana, different forms that arise from it. If it were true that each of these matter envelopments, each ahankara had its own consciousness, what would illumine that consciousness then? If it's separate, that's one problem we run into. Second problem we run into is we're saying Advaita says it's the one and only. If there are multiple consciousnesses, where is this idea of one and only at that point? So all these other problems arise when our Siddhanta changes in any way. There is that one consciousness. Whether this ahankara exists or not is immaterial. It simply exists. And when I look at it from the standpoint of me having this individuality, I say it is the illuminator right there. Now, one more objection that arises. If we look at the composition of this entire Jagat, and by this point, the change we're going to make is when we say Jagat, the world, we're including this ahankara in that. We'll see that concept arise later today. So we look at this entire creation of the Jagat. There are those objects that are made that are inanimate objects. They have no consciousness associated with them. The way they come about is they are purely tamasic in their guna composition. Grossification, panchikarana is the technical term, that happens to those 5 elements. They turn into these inanimate objects right here, tamasic completely. If you look at this individual then, my karmendriyas, organs of action, hands, legs, mouth, genital organ, excretory organ, these are all formed with the rajasic aspect of those same 5 elements. Because they have to give into action and to do, they're made of the rajasic aspect. Then my jnanendriyas, those sense organs that let in ahara, intake through eyes, nose, taste, all these different functionalities that are there, they're made up of the sattvic amsha, that sattvic aspect of those same 5 elements. So inanimate objects, tamasic, purely. These karmendriyas, organs of action that I have, rajasic element. Jnanendriyas, the organs of perception, this is all sattvic. So one objection that comes up at this point is, if the jnanendriyas, those sense organs, are made up of that sattvic element, why do they need some other entity to illumine them? Are they not purely functioning on their own? Because sattva is the nature of knowledge. It's not that they have to become something else. Sattva is the nature of knowledge. If we're saying something is of the nature of knowledge, then it should be knowing automatically. Why do you have to have some other entity illumine it? And let's do a test here as well. For you to understand what I'm saying that hits you through the ear, you're making sense of it in the intellect. The inner instrument and the sense organs are facilitating that to happen. What does the witness even do at that point? And think about it. This is in the waking. We're all hopefully in the waking state still. I know, 20 minutes from now is when we start dipping. I have to pull in some story or joke or something then. For now, we're still okay. That's why I'm hitting you with all the heavy stuff starting out. But when we're in the deep sleep state later tonight, the intellect is not functioning then. I don't have access to the intellect. And we're saying the witness is there even then. What is the proof of that? We can say it's self-luminous. Yes, Veda tells us that very clearly. You're seeing the effect of your inner instrument at play. You're seeing the effect of the sense organs doing their functioning. This witnesshood, the fact that it has to be there to even facilitate any of this, that's still hard for me to believe. That's why then we go to this 13th shloka. Nirantaram bhasamane kutasthe jnaptirupataha tadbhasa bhasyamaneyam buddhir nrityatyanekadha. What it's saying here is when that immutable, meaning unchanging sakshi is there, the intellect dances in many different ways. What is the meaning right here then? The way we're looking at these 5 elements and how matter comes about is incorrect. Tamasic, we're saying, is this inanimate object that has no consciousness associated with it. Rajasic is that which gives in to action, action-oriented karmendriyas that are there. Sattvic, jnanendriyas. Anything that is made up of these 5 elements is inert. Without anything enlivening those 5 elements, there is nothing that can take place. When a person dies, that body that remains is the same body that was there throughout life. The organs are still intact and right there. It looks the same, more or less. What's missing from there, we exactly cannot pinpoint. A doctor at best can look at the vital signs and say there is no heartbeat, there is no breathing, there is no functionality. They can point to all these things. What is that specific thing missing from that body? Even they cannot point to and say what that is. Everything is merely external vital markers that are there, not pointing at what that exact thing is. That is that spark of consciousness. Even for this intellect to function, that has to be there. The funny thing is, the most important thing for me to function, I cannot even recognize. Dispel the notion right now. There is no point sitting in meditation that I am now the sakshi, I am beyond the intellect. It does not work. Why? That's the intellect saying that itself. So if we're on this quest to feel we are sakshi, feel I am the witness, that will never happen. That is not the point of the study right here. The intellect will always be there. I always function in and through this intellect. The understanding in that vishvasa, trust has to be there in what the Veda is saying, that there is something else illuminating. And let my quest be to understand my identity as that thing, still using this intellect. Nirantaram bhasamane. Though it never changes, this intellect is always giving into movement, always changing. Now here it's important to see why this part is so poignant right here. Chanchala, the fickleness of this intellect. We always see this changing intellect as a sign of progress. And by changing intellect, I don't just mean thoughts coming and going, any labels we assume, anything we amass through yoga, kshema, of amassing things and preserving them, that's all attributed to the intellect. That I am the owner of this house. I have done this great achievement. That's all at the intellectual level. Since birth, we have been conditioned completely to bloat this intellect. Get good grades in school. For what purpose? So that you get to a good college. Get to a good college. For what purpose? So that you get a good job. What is a good job? One that pays well. Why get a good paying job? So I can support myself and my family. Why support myself and my family? Because that's what successful people do. Okay, what do I do with that money then? Make sure to maintain a certain lifestyle. For what purpose? To be happy. Why be happy in this way? Because people say that's what makes you happy. And then we wake up and we're 65 years old. Tell me I'm wrong. At what point have we ever been told that cutting down this ego, cutting down all the other labels that come with it, that is the way to happiness? We read it in books like this. What does it mean to us at the end of the day, though? It's hardly ever put in practice. Even in a Vedantic lecture, you'll find far less people in a lecture like this talking about this kind of a concept. That which talks about some Purana Itihasa, some story time, some lessons like that, that's much more entertaining to listen to. Something to actually think about that goes against what we want to do with the intellect. So again, gaining for the intellect for us means building, amassing. Here, this is a method of self-destruction at the end of the day, not a method of any kind of self-building. Self-destruction in the sense of That small self that I see myself as, vinasha of that, seeing myself as nothing but this totality. That is true oneness that we're going for. So then in the 14th shloka, we come to another exploration of this ego. Again, it is a summary of what we've seen until this point. Ahankara prabhu sabhya vishaya nartaki matihi taladid harinyakshani Dipa sakshyavabhasakaha. Ahankaraha prabhu sabhya. The entire sabhya that is there, ahankara is that patron. Vishaya nartaki matihi. All these vishayas, objects that we find, that comes in terms of the audience that's there. Nartaki matihi, the dancer, is the intellect. That inner instrument that is constantly moving. Taladid harin yakshani, the musicians are those senses. Deepaha sakshi avabhasakaha, the lamp is the witnessing intellect, witnessing illuminer. And the one to key in on here is that nartaki matihi, that dancer, which is that inner instrument. That is the most important one out of all of these to look at in this shloka. What's our new line of thinking that we're taking right here? This inner instrument, how much does it control its surroundings? How much of it is controlled by its surroundings? That's the question to ask myself at that point. That's why this example is so perfect right here. Because back to that analogy then, when the crowd is falling asleep and struggling to stay alive like right now, then the dancer has to do something that's a bit more upbeat. It's like people that when they go to a ghazal concert, if they've liked going to rock concerts and you go listen to Hindustani ghazals, you will fall asleep right there. That same person who's used to Anmujalota's bhajans, you go to a metallic rock concert, they'll have a heart attack there. They can't take it. It's what we're used to, right? Different things that we like, preponderance of different gunas we all have. So like that, when it's something slow-paced, then that dancer picks up the pace. They control what the surroundings do there. More often than not, however, in our lives, because the sense objects of the world have a certain allure, these sense organs are panting, going after them, therefore my intellect gets affected by that. How often is it that when I make a decision, I say I'm doing this from the standpoint of what the right thing is, based on deliberation, therefore my sense organs have to agree? The most basic example of that we can say as a sadhana is waking up at a certain time. All right, we are blessed in today's day and age with the snooze button. That's 9 minutes of the most glorious sleep you can ever get. 9 minutes, right? That's how it is on my phone at least, when I do use the snooze button. So you can press that 9 minutes, you can keep going with it. You can do it up to 8 or 9 times. That's 72 to 81 minutes more of sleep. It's wonderful. Now, telling myself intellectually, if I wake up early, I get more productivity out of my day, I can do more, more time for sadhana, more time to not be rushed, take my time, all of this. That's at the intellectual level. Mentally, I see I'm also inspired to do this, willpower will be there. But at that moment where it is time to wake up, the sense organs refuse to respond well at that time. Especially talking to our college kids, they're very honest with me. So they say, I do want to get up early and everything, but, especially if we're up late studying, or we've taken some liquid courage the night before and imbibed that, it's even harder to get up in the morning. All these externalities will be there. The sense organs take those on. They refuse to respond at that time. Because the sense organs refuse to respond, that mind that had that firm conviction and willpower that I will do this, that falters. That intellect that was abiding in what is right and making that resolve, that also falters right there. So we say the mighty intellect is the most powerful. Is that always the case, though? If anything, it's these sense organs that are the most powerful then, because of the information they get. So is it that this intellect is actually guiding the rest of the assembly, Or is it that the sense organs take it over at every single turn? That's the difference between impulsivity and actually living by making decisions from the standpoint of the intellect. If that's not mastered, everything else we talk about here of Sakshi and that Paramatma, that's really far away. Third sadhana then. First two sadhanas, do you remember from yesterday? First one, what did we look at? Simply observing the thought, not getting attached to it, simply observing the thought and letting it go. That was the first thing. Second thing was? Second one was reducing that mental commentary on everything. The first thought I have about something is a pure thought. Every thought that comes after that is some like, dislike, something else I'm putting on there. Like when I used to go to the Frisco Center last year, you have to walk from the parking lot into the school. That's right there. So you see, I feel like 70% of Frisco drives Teslas, and 70% of those drive red Teslas. And 80% of our Indians are the ones that drive 70% of those red Teslas, it seems, right? So going up there, you find blue Tesla, red Tesla, silver Tesla, all dropping off their kids and going. First thought is, this is a Tesla. Benign thought, observation. Second thought I'd have is, man, these parents, we tell them so many times, don't just drop off your kid and go. One parent has to be here. They never listen. What do we do about this? It's stressful for me. And all this at 8:30 in the morning, right before I have to have a good day and spread goodness and positivity to everybody that's there, right? And other tracks of mind it can go to, okay, I'm not going to get mad about this right now. Or also see the next Tesla, silver Tesla. And Tesla is Elon Musk's company. That guy's insane. You go into that route right there then, thinking about more global things. So the first thought is always good. Any commentary beyond that either is indulging my own tendencies that I have of wallowing or some kind of anger or destruction, something like that, something that's unnecessary or strengthens my opinions further, unnecessary. So first, watching the thoughts go. Second, not providing this mental commentary every time I interact with something. Third, then, looking at this shloka, can I make decisions from an intellectual standpoint, or are my decisions impulsive? And how do I know which decisions are impulsive? They're the ones that I regret. If I've lost my cool, I've said something to someone, I regret how it makes them feel, what I have to deal with afterwards, that is an impulsive decision right there. The senses swayed me there. This can happen financially as well. They say you should never go grocery shopping when you're hungry. It's true. Eat a full meal and then go. Or else everything looks so enticing and enhancing to you. Everything looks great right there. Now, for different people, it's different impulses like that. For me, it's clothes and stuff I used to love growing up, wearing a nice suit and things like this. Now in this life, that's largely immaterial. I walk into a Kohl's or JCPenney, is there anything on sale in yellow? That's the first thing I look for, and then I walk out. There's nothing else for me to do. Not much. But the still impulsive buys that I do have, I admit, books. I love to read. And in an airport, Indian mentality, I get there like 2 or 2.5 hours before. And then once TSA is done grabbing me everywhere they want to, I finally get through. And so, again, bars and stuff in the airport, that doesn't interest me. The one thing is the bookstores. You go in just to glance. Invariably, 1 or 2 books, you're like, oh man, I gotta have this. Now, after I buy it, am I gonna read it, or does it just collect dust in my bookshelf? Who knows? But that impulse is still there. Like that for each one of us, whether it's purchasing or gossiping or seeing something or meeting someone, there are all kinds of impulses that are there, steered by my sense organs. What does my intellect say at that point? On one end, it can make an excuse. Oh, the last time you bought a book was 3 weeks ago. Even if you haven't even opened it yet, that's fine. It was 3 whole weeks ago, therefore you can buy this book. Intellect will give me reasons to want to pump up what these sense organs want. How often does this intellect act as a voice of reason? Saying, I don't think that's really wise to do. In the few times that it does, do I listen to that intellect? Do I quell it completely? So the next stage of getting to understand what that witness even is, do I listen to the reasonable intellect when it's there? With all its modifications that are there, do I listen to it when it's being reasonable? Now, one more question to ask ourselves before moving on here. Is there a shift that occurs when I stop identifying myself with those sense organs and identify myself with that intellect? Because what is identification at the end of the day? Like, give your driver's license, for instance. What are all the things that are listed there? Name, full name. Date of birth is there. Address is there. Eye color is there. Hair color is there, as if you can't change that. You can. What else is there? Gender is there. We won't get into that one. I don't want to get canceled. That is one that is there. Yes, yes. What else is there? Height is there. Yeah. Weight is not there. That's a much more fickle one that can change much more easily than height. So weight's not there. Expiration date is there. Not of the person, of the ID, right? Yes. Of the ID. Huh? Organ donation is there. There's a little heart on the corner right there. And on the back of it, glasses, corrective lenses, all of these things. Every single one of these markations that is there is for the purpose of distinguishing me specifically. God forbid there's some other Hari Chaitanya that lives in Dallas that robs the Walmart next door. I'm just minding my business driving, and they stop me. Thank God that I'm, 5'6", but I say I'm 5'7", so that's what the license says. Thank God I have the black hair and the corrective lenses. These are differentiating markers, because it's happened before. Mistaken identity. When I was growing up, my grandfather used to live with us. There was someone else in the same city as us with the same name as him. And that guy had a habit of buying things without paying for them. So collections and stuff would call our house, send us mail. And many times my dad had to say, dude, that's not us, that's some other guy. He lives in our city to our detriment. That's not really us. That happens, mistaken identity. The mistaken identity I face in my life right now is my identification card that I carry mentally. What does it say on it as its markers? My sense of taste likes this. My sense of sight likes this. Sense of smell likes this. Touch likes this. That's what it says everywhere, all over it. That is how I comport myself and go about my life. Because just as we've been conditioned, good school all the way to great salary, that's that whole linear structure that we have, in that same kind of a framework is doing what's good for your senses is what makes you happy. Eat good food, drink good drinks, be merry. That's what it is. And when any kind of restriction is given then, that these senses have to be reined in, have some capacity for vairagya to gain that dispassion, that goes against all the conditionings that I've had. Because my identity is fully with these sense organs. Now, this is where we introduce what the overall Hindu mindset is. What is it that separates our Hindu social structure from the rest of the world? Because every single country's social structure is guided by what those philosophical principles of that area are. Whether it's capitalism, socialism, all these different contracts. So what is the Hindu perspective then? From the Hindu perspective, even if you look at the goals of life that are presented, they are presented from that standpoint of understanding that the sense organs are fickle and want to go in whichever direction they want to go to. The intellect also falls under that sway. Social structure is meant to keep that from happening. In what way? There's a dialogue between Arjuna and Yudhishthira in Mahabharata, where this is during those 26 years that they had in Indraprastha, which was a nice, peaceful time. There was no invasions by Duryodhana happening. Everyone was really peaceful. So they had a lot of time for chai and charcha and some deep discussions on some really great topics. So these discussions happen in the version of Mahabharata that we don't read, meaning the full version. B.R. Chopra won't show these discussions in his serial. Okay? N.T. Ramarao won't be doing this in his movies. This is in the text. What do we find? Yudhishthira asks Arjuna, what was the need for any kind of government? You are an adult, I'm an adult, we know what we want to do, we're responsible ourselves. Why is there a need for government in the first place? Arjuna responds to him. This is Arjuna telling Dharmaraja. That's what's interesting here. Arjuna says, there was a time in history where there was no need for government in Satya Yuga, where even thinking a thought of hani towards someone else was a sin. People regulated themselves the right way, there was no need for government. Over time, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, with all of these other changes coming and people's senses being modified so much, just like today, the big guy would pick on the little guy, but a bigger guy would come and protect that little guy. He said over time, even that went away. People started really taking advantage of others. Therefore, there was a need for government. He gives 3 reasons why. This is really, really fascinating to see. First reason for the government is, without a government structure, all rites and rituals would fall away. Samskaras of what people have to do. And look at in the world today. You all did Anna Prashna for your kids, Akshara Abhyasa, you did all of these things. So many in my generation having kids, we were like, who cares? First time eating solid food, we'll give them Gerber. Who cares? Well, why do we have to have a special ceremony for it? It's so outdated, we don't understand this. And even those few people that do Vivaha Samskara according to the Vedas, Kanyadana is not good, it's regressive. They've thrown out so many things without even understanding what it means, right? So he said, without a governing structure, samskaras, rites and rituals, all of this, none of it would be done, would not be regulated at all. Second reason he gives, without a government structure, there would be no personal property. Like how gangsters do kabja right now, people would just go and usurp other people's lands because they could. Personal property would not exist without that governing structure maintaining that. Third reason he gives, because there's a tradition and regulation, there's this idea of me, my wife, my kids. Me, my husband, my kids. We have that kind of decorum that's there. Without that governing entity keeping that in line, it would be people having kids with anybody. There are certain parts of the world we see that today as well, that happens. Parts of our country that happens as well. Why these 3 examples in particular? First example, rites and rituals would completely fall away without that regulation. Dharma goes away at that point. Second example, personal property would not exist. Artha is not possible without that regulation. Third example of the family structure and being responsible with desire, kama would not be executed properly. Meaning, even a governing structure, according to the Hindu standpoint, is for the purpose of regulating kama, artha, dharma in a responsible way so that society is not misguided by these 3 purusharthas or goals. Society is pointed towards moksha as that ultimate goal right there. That's how society even functioned. So here we talk about it's so hard at the individual level not to focus on the needs of our sense organs and to think with the intellect. The entire social structure of Sanatana Dharma was to fight that very problem. It was not some capitalistic structure of you get more, earn more, that's what makes you happy, go after every single desire. That's not what the preoccupation. It also was not some kind of Marxist socialist structure where it was anyone that wants more in the world, they shouldn't go for it, everyone should have the same thing only, wealth should be distributed equally. That was not the preoccupation either. There was a healthy amount of understanding the individual has their own desires. The individual also has a certain divinity to them that can be provoked when needed. Let that be regulated properly. So everything we talk about of this intellect going awry, the intellect is strong so far as what is the knowledge that's being fed to it? What is the knowledge being fed to that intellect? It can be brilliant. This inner instrument can be used for the most amazing things. This inner instrument can also be used for terrible destruction. Even a gangster wants smart people working for him. Everyone does. No matter what walk of life, everyone wants intelligent people around them. There's a story of that one Swamiji who was traveling around the country. He met one family. The mom had 3 sons. And when you want to brag about your kids, right? So my eldest son, he's a lawyer about to become a judge. Youngest judge in the district at his age. Second son, he's an acclaimed doctor, right? He saves lives. Third son, didn't really study that well, doesn't have much going for him. Swamiji, you take him in your ashram. Swamiji said, why would I take him? If I want one of your sons, give me one of the older 2, the ones that have something good with them. They can actually produce something. They're capable. Why do I want this dull one that you have, the last one? Now, that's in a joking way, but look at the samasya that Bhagavan Shri Adi Shankaracharyaji's parents were met with. At the time of having their child, Bhagavan Shiva asked them very directly, you have 2 choices. Either you have a son that lives a long life, but doesn't have much intelligence in that life, doesn't accomplish anything, is dull, just exists pretty much, exists with you for a long time, but nothing special about him. Or you have a son that doesn't live very long, 16 years at that time, but what he will do will change the entire world. Whom would you rather have? Courageously, they said, we want the one who will have some consequence in the world. Like that, with my sense organs and intellect, choosing one way is, I will just pad these sense organs, make them happy. Intellectually, I'll go with the flow. There's no need for any kind of improvement that way. Very few and far in between that say, I value the intellect over valuing the sense organs. I want my intellect to grow, not just these sense organs. Now, how is this analyzed in our Shastra then? Again, going back to the first day, the one structure that we saw was sattva, rajas, tamas in these gunas. The reason is every facet of my life can be analyzed through these 3 gunas and can tell me what I'm doing. Am I pandering to the sense organs or am I nourishing the intellect? In Hamsa Gita, for instance, Bhagavan goes through 10 different departments, just as he does in Bhagavad Gita with the gunas. One of them he goes through is praja, company. The company of the people that I keep can be marked as sattva, rajas, or tamas. Tamasic company is to be around those people that bring me down. It's like crabs. When you transport crabs, they don't put lids on them because oxygen not going in there, they'll die. They're all on top of each other. But they never have to worry about the crabs leaving the bucket. Why? Because even if a crab tries to come out, the other crab brings it down. If none of them ever leave that bucket right there, it can be uncovered. Like that, that's like being in tamasic company, where people have so much insecurity that seeing someone else succeed gives them sorrow. Have you met people like this in your life? It's there. You invite them to a new house that you bought. Instantly, the moment they lay eyes on your house, jal raha hai andar se. They feel totally like, oh my God, you have all these things. Oh, you have so much stuff. You'll get ruined with their eyes looking at you. That's true. Nazar, all of this is true. It's there. That's tamas. A rajasic company. Those that inspire me, yes. Not always do the right thing, however. They say the most dangerous people to have when a teenager is driving a car for the first time, the most dangerous passengers to have are fellow teenagers, their friends. They're the ones that will say, hey, take this curve at 80 miles an hour. They're the ones that, most accidents happen that way for teenagers. When they're with their parents, they drive well. It's with their friends to show off to them is when they do all these crazy, stupid things, and they find themselves messed up because of it. So Rajasic company is one that inspires, no doubt, but in what direction? That's to be seen. Sattvic company is what? that where the people around me are not simply yes men. Not just haji for everything I want to do, bloviating me, making me feel like I'm right all the time. It's those people that stick to dharma, unafraid to tell me when I'm wrong and what I'm doing, also courageously supporting me when I'm doing the right thing, even if it's not popular amongst others. That is a sattvic praja. Now, don't have to say it out loud, but think for yourself. In your immediate circles that you have, what kind of guna do you have the most people of around you? Are they tamasic people bringing you down? Rajasic people that say, you should live a certain way where fulfilling the senses is all that matters, pulling you in that direction? Or are they sattvic alliances that help you go spiritually in this way, without any kind of judgment, without any kind of prodding one way or the other, but actually uplifting and inspiring? Because in our essence, we have three major circles around us. I talked about this in the Devi group a few weeks ago. Innermost circle, people that know us the best. This is if there's a giveaway. You get to win 1 week living on a nice exotic island, you get to bring 10 people with you. Who are your 10 people? They come to your mind, right? And as your brahmachari, I see you guys week in week, maybe hopefully I'm one of your 10. Knock off one cousin somewhere and bring me, man. It's okay. It'll be fine. Right? So I'm in your top 10 circle, hopefully. Circle beyond that, your hi, hello, happy new year friends. When there's big news or something, you reach out to them. When there's big news, they reach out to you. Okay? You know they have 3 kids. You may not know all their names off the top of your head. It's like those kind of people, right? A little bit of outer circle. And then a circle beyond that, even your social circle. There was a time in Chinmaya Mission, when Saket was first built, there were about 60 families here. Meaning every family had to have at least one Balvihar teacher in their family. Every family had to have at least one volunteer working somewhere. It was all hands on deck in those early years. And whether it was Swamiji or everyone knew everyone else. Now, with 3 massive centers and massive sessions, graduation day comes, and then there'll be kids on stage walking with their families. I cannot even name half of them. I'm trying to change that, trying to get to know them, but that's the reality that we live in right now. That's that wider circle then. The wider circle of people you interact with. You know them by faces, but maybe not names. In these 3 circles then, that widest circle, it's easy to get along and love them. People that you see once in a while, it's really easy to respect and love. As you get closer in those circles, that's when it matters more. Are these alliances with the praja, is it sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic? That if I want to pursue something spiritually, are these people that scoff at me and say, hey, that's nonsense, what's the point of this or anything? Or are they actually people that are supportive of that? What do I want to inculcate as I get older with the people around me? Now, this was just one analysis of praja in that vein of sattva, rajas, tamas. And easily we see, as we rise towards sattva, it's more of a reliance and introspective look through the intellect rather than simply pandering to the sense organs. That's true of anything we analyze through the gunas. Even food, for instance, ahara is also analyzed in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Their tamasic consumption ahara is what? Food that is putrid. Alcohol is food that is putrid. Grapes that have been let to rot. That's what alcohol is, fermentation. Then non-vegetarian food, food that digests very, very slowly, releasing toxins into the body. That's why cancer rates are rising so much. Tamasic food. Rajasic food, highly spicy, highly salty, highly sweet, highly bitter. Andhra food is what I think of when I think of that. Highly everything is what that is. So highly everything, an Andhra meal right there, right? That's enjoyable, but it's high in all these qualities. Sattvic food, food that is fresh, consumed quickly after being produced. That which is not overly preserved so that it lasts forever, like a Taco Bell burrito. Right? These are foods that are the cleanest then. Again, When I consume those foods that are tamasic and rajasic, it is because they make my sense organs feel good. Those 2 minutes where I can chew it up and swallow it, that's the best feeling at that time. I eat food because it feels good at that time. What happens afterwards and the suffering and everything I have to go through, that will not come to my mind when I'm chewing on it at that moment. That is sense organs taking over, not the intellect right there. So any one of these departments can be analyzed that way. The gunas are the most amazing tool that we have at our disposal for this kind of understanding. Nothing else comes close to that. Now, one concept we had talked about earlier on, this idea of a superimposition, adhyasa. And the example given was, when you put the crystal that is clear next to a cloth, that crystal assumes the same color as that cloth very easily. It's hard to distinguish it. So you say that's a blue crystal, simply because it's taking on, throwing something that's next to it. Similarly, this sakshi, the witness, what is the actual I, because the intellect keeps moving with its thoughts and labels and stature and all of this, it seems as if that very witness is moving also. What's the most classic example we find for this? Ishavasya Upanishad, the example given the second to last mantra is Pushan. Pushan means the sun, Surya Devata. There are so many parallels between the sun and this witness right here. What are some of them? For one, they're both self-luminous. There's no light switch to turn the sun on and off. When I was a child, I thought at nighttime there's a switch. God turns it off and the sun goes out. No, we are actually the ones turning, that's why. Sun is always there. Because the sun is there, moonlight also comes to us. That's the scientific thing. So self-luminous in that way. Second, it's motionless. Motionless gives the... When Pujya Guruji first joined the Vedanta course in 1972, they were about to start the course. Pujya Gurudev had his second heart attack at that time. First one was in 68. The second heart attack was in 72. So then they canceled the inauguration for the course. And they said, look, Gurudev's recovery, we don't know how long it could take. It could take months. It could be a whole year that he's out. You all came for the course. If you want to stay, stay until the course begins, but you never know. If you want to go, go. A lot of the students left. The one student that stayed back, a very young Swami Tejovainanji. So before the course started, Gurudev ran a camp on Viveka Chudamani. And so it's all a bunch of old people there. For Vedantic lectures, it's all old people that come. Not here, other places. So it's all old people that come. Young Guruji is the only one there, barely 20 years old. So any question that comes up in the texts, Gurudev looks at him and asks him in front of everybody. What is the answer to this, answer to that? So at one point he said to him, give me one lakshana of Atma, is what he said. So Guruji said, Atma is motionless. And so Gurudev roared, do you mean to say Atma is constipated? Is what he said. He said Atma is motionless. So that's not what is meant here. Motionless means unmoving is what it is. The sun is unmoving. I think it moves because I'm the one that moves. That's why when we say sunrise, sunset, those are compromise statements right there. We shouldn't call it sunrise. We should say earth rotating and therefore sun looks like it's rising, something like that. Those aren't real. From our perspective, it looks that way. Self-luminous, motionless, only stationary. Another lakshana, just like that witness, it impartially illuminates everything in its path. When shade is there, it's not that the sun refuses to illuminate that part. There is some kind of obstruction keeping it from being illuminated. Illuminates everything impartially, without any kind of bias. So here you can see, the sun has all these qualities, yet because we move, we say the sun moves. Because we have some kind of impediment like a cloud or a roof or something, we say the sun is not shining here. These are all conditionings that we're placing right there. Because of our own movements or the movements we see from our limited perspective, we are changing what that highest perspective of the sun is. Similarly, when my intellect moves, I do not have clarity in something. I say, this is not making sense, this is useless. I'm throwing that away. That could be this highest knowledge. If it does not seem practical to me in my life, I will dismiss it also. That's nothing but that conditioning. Just as the sun impartially illumines, this witness also impartially illumines, I refuse to see certain things it illumines. I'll go after sense organs and what they want, not exactly what the intellect needs. This witness is motionless just like that sun. But because my intellect is always moving, I attribute that chanchalatva to that sakshi witness right there. That's the problem that I find myself in. And so the 15th shloka, Svasthana samsthito deepaha sarvato bhasayet yatha sthirasthai tatha sakshi bahirantah prakashayet. Now this idea comes up of light reveals everything in its path, even though itself is motionless, seems to be moving. The next question that arises from all of this, though, is we brought up this idea of inside and outside early on. Antarmukha, Bahirmukha. Antarmukha meaning those intellectual modifications that are internal within this inner instrument. When I say I, that is that aspect of the thought. This or that is Bahirmukha, external modification that I'm pointing at. Every single thought that I have has both of these modifications to it. Even when I say this book, essentially what that thought actually is I know this book. I see this book. Therefore, there's that I portion and knowingness of the book that is the external Bahirmukha. The objection that comes now is, we're saying Sakshi is all-pervasive without a second. We're saying that Sakshi illumines everything impartially. If that is the case, how can you say that there is an inside and that there's an outside? Isn't that a valid objection? How are we making this distinction right here when Sakshi illumines everything? 16th shloka, Bahirantar vibhagoyam dehapeksho na sakshini vishaya bahya deshastha dehasyantaraham kritihi. The distinction between this external and internal refers to the body, not to that witness consciousness. This is yet one more example of adhyaropa, that deliberate superimposition that I'm placing right here. As long as I think I am this body, there is an inside and there's an outside. The moment that notion goes away, this erroneous notion also falls away. Look at it from the perspective of space. Out of the 5 elements, the elements rise in subtlety based on how much less they can be perceived than the previous element. Most grossified element is, most tangible, earth, gandha. Earth has what kinds of sense attributes to it? I can taste the earth. I can smell it, gandha is there. I can feel texture. I can hear it as well. All of this is there. All 5 senses are taken care of. Next more subtle than earth, water as an element. Water has a texture to it, sapidity is there. Bhagavan says that in Gita, I am the sapidity of the water. There is a taste to water. Water is tasteless. There's no taste to it. There's a babbling brook, I can hear the water going in there. So all of these things, you see that they're less now, the number of attributes given. It's only 4 this time. Fire is more subtle than water. I can feel the heat of a fire. Touch is there, though painful. I can hear the crackling of a fire. I can see the fire for sure. Tasting of a fire, I wouldn't recommend it, right? more subtle than fire? Air. Air, if I don't directly feel the texture on my skin, the only I know the force of the air is by seeing other things blowing in the wind. Sight is not really sight of the air, I'm seeing other things blow. Really, feeling and hearing of the air is the only thing. Do I perceive space at all? The only way I know space is existing as an element is because of the sense of hearing. If there was no space, there would be no way for sound to travel. Space is necessary for that. So here, subtlety of elements is given in that perceptibility of the element falls as it becomes more subtle. Space is the most subtle element. Air is different from space. Air is those molecules going around. Space is what they're contained in. That itself is an element. We have made this structure and building right here, and we're saying this space is called the assembly hall. That space is called the Prayag classroom. That space is called the Ayodhya classroom. We've given it these various markers right there. Is the space actually being divided? It's not. At the end of the day, it's a human construct you and I have made for a utility purpose in our understanding. Or else we say, Balvihar kids, go to your grade classroom. If there's no names for the classrooms in different spaces, it's more chaotic than it usually is on a Sunday then. That's what it turns into. We need it for that reason. Similarly, for me in this process, growing as a sadhaka, I need to have this idea of antarmukha and bahirmukha. It has to be there. Simply for the purpose of understanding, these are externalities that should not affect my inner instrument. My inner instrument should be the one that affects how I view my surroundings. That's the purpose why it's given right there. Or else, if this was not given as a distinction, how do I grow in this process of making sure my intellect supersedes my sense organs? Everything is just one space I'm dealing with right here. Now I can say antarmukha should be given precedence over bahirmukha. Thoughts in my intellect are what lead to actions. Therefore, righteousness should come from that level, and I should be the one in control of my sense organs, not my sense organs controlling me, because they're on the outside dealing with the outer face of the world. There is Upadesha Sada. My copy of Upadesha Sada I hold very dear to me. It has Sarveshananji's signature from the YEP course in there. What did he write in there? He took up a name as a reference for this. He said the name Sridhara is a name of Mahavishnu. He said everyone should remember that you are Shri. No, you are Dhara. Dhara means the one who holds of Shri, divine potentialities. Meaning you control your own divine potentialities, not the other way around. With divine potentialities controlling you, may you realize this here and now, is what he wrote in the book right there. What a beautiful message. Very pointed message, but what a beautiful message. Simply to show that all the potentialities we have to do good, to do wrong, to do anything, we are the ones that hold that potential from that antarmukha perspective. It's not that these things control me in any single way. Understanding that helps me understand further what this witness is. So this is the second compromise statement we've come to in 2 days. The first compromise statement was calling this Chaitanya Sakshi in the first place. Just like we say sunrise, even though the sun doesn't move. We call this Chaitanya a witness, even though there is nothing to be witnessed, because I've compromised it, saying this world is real. This ahankara is real, therefore I call it Sakshi. Second compromise statement we're making today, saying there is this antarmukha, inner, and bahirmukha, outer. These inner, outer do not exist. It's just one. We say that to understand intellect is here, should be given the respect and reverence it needs to grow. The rest are everything facing outside right there. Now, last shloka we look at for today, what do we find? Another exploration of this mind. To see the fickleness of the mind, we saw that before, previous shlokas. Here there's an explanation of what to do with the fickleness of mind, which direction to take with it. Antasthaadhi sahaivakshaihi bahiryati punah punah bhasya buddhistanchalyam sakshinyaropyate vritha. Bahiryati punah punah. It goes out again and again. Antasthaadhihi. Despite being seated inwards, this mind keeps going out again and again. Sakshini aropyate vritha. It's illumined by that witness consciousness. What's the problem in all of this then? In my vanity, I try to impose this fickleness onto that sakshi instead of seeing it happening to the buddhi, the intellect. What is meant by that? Even in my very verbiage, what do I say on a daily basis? I am happy. I am sad. I am furious. I am despondent. I am depressed. We'll throw these terms around, attributing it to I. What is the real way to look at it, though? If I'm truly a Vedantin, how will I internally see this? My mind is fickle. My mind is sad. My mind is happy. Haribhai, you sound like a lunatic when you talk like that. Yeah, I know. That's why this is internal dialogue and not external dialogue that we use. The reason being, if I want to see I as what it truly is, that Sakshi Chaitanya, in my own language to myself at least, shouldn't I be able to separate that I from the intellect? Instead, I give myself that label of I am happy, I am sad, stamping myself with it. Where is the scope to see this intellect as something separate from that I then? I'm putting those two together very unfairly. Now again, this is an internal exercise. Don't talk to people like this. Our Acharya at the course told us, in the previous course, there was one student that was there, and her spouse was visiting her halfway through the course with her kids. So Vedanta happening too much too fast, it can lead to some weird things. She introduced her family to the Swami. This body right here is my husband. This body right here is my son. This body right here is my daughter. That's why people think ashrams are loony bins. That's why people don't want their kids to go to ashrams for that reason. When people talk like this, that is an internal dialogue that should happen. So please don't say, I sat in Hari's lecture and now I go around and someone says, are you doing well? No, my intellect is doing well. Hari told me to speak like this. No one will come to my lectures then. Please don't do that, okay? Internally, however, it's a good practice to have. That when I feel so attached to a certain emotion, certain mindset, that is the nature of the intellect, which is always fickle. I am something away from that. Therefore, words matter when it comes to my own reflection that way. Let that be one other sadhana that's taken up. So with that, with a few minutes left, we can do a Q&A today, since we're exactly 3/4 of the way through. Doing it any sooner, you'd be asking questions that come up later. This is a good time to clear anything up before we take the home stretch. So all I ask is be loud with your question, that's all. Yes? Five elements are affected by those three gunas in the way they're grossified or how they remain subtle. When they're completely made grossified so that they're perceptible all around, that is the most tamasic layer. That's a panchikaranam process that happens. Because they go through that process, they're given the label of being tamasic. Because of the way the elements turn out, they're given a label of the gunas. That's how it is. Maya's nature is Trigunatmika. Yeah. And a product of Maya is those elements, which can be classified that way as well. Yeah.
So you're talking about debate between intellect and the sense organs. In that
Intellect, we can say, is the seat of deliberation, decision making. Sense organs, we can say, is our interface to the world, of how they own up these sense objects that are there. In this whole thing, the mind, we can say, is the seat of emotions there, where the willpower that gives that intellect the strength to say, this is what I'm going to do, that emotion that comes even when intellectual knowledge is there, right? Every parent knows my kid has to go to college coming in the fall. That is a part of the process. Just as I left my own family to go study somewhere or go abroad, my kid is doing the same thing. That sadness will still be there when they go. So intellectual is knowingness, deliberation, decision. Mind is that seat of emotion still. That's the buffer between them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sense organs overtaking the intellect and the mind. And the mind also. Because the mind is that place where inspiration and things should be there. Where let me feel that happiness of waking up early and going through my day and everything. Instead, those sense organs that feel comfortable. Where if you look at the functionality of the eyes at that point, all the different sense organs, they want to feel that warmth of the bed. They want to feel that rest that's there, not wanting to have to get up. That's all physical right there. They're taking over that mind and intellect at that point. Yes? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they put the mind in that position. Because I say, okay, the sense organs like this kind of a situation, I keep doing that more and more. They get used to that. The mind also gets used to being a slave to those sense organs then. And that's why I keep doing it. So yes, vasanas exist in the mind. At the end of the day also, this will come tomorrow, deeper. Even though we say I keep saying we're doing this for the sake of the sense organs, really, if you look at that subtle body and where pleasure is felt, pain is felt, that's felt in the mind, right? My knee hurting, right? Or my nose hurting or something. I'm not feeling pain there. Pain is in the mind at the end of the day. That's why we say we have different pain tolerance and things. Even though it's the mind that essentially feels that, when it comes to looking at this whole structure and saying, where am I pandering to? That's why I'm saying sense organs so much, for that purpose. Completely. Yeah. Alrighty then, tomorrow we finish it out. The big topics that come up tomorrow are more practical in nature again. How to recognize this witnesshood even more. So, last session tomorrow. Yeah. It can come into the picture. We could have made that mapping happen, where the framework of the three bodies, then you could say the whole gross body, that very most tangible physical layer, that isn't really given that much credence here. Subtle body and causal body are looked at very thoroughly here. Subtle body of the seat of the pranas, the mind and the intellect, we've talked about that at length. Also, when it comes to desires that come, where they trickle from is that causal body. That's where vasanas are seated, and that is where everything trickles down to the subtle body. So that's one framework I can take up tomorrow that will come. We're looking through that framework, seeing how the witness is even more subtle than that. Because we went through the gunas, we went through the elements as one way. We looked at purusharthas even. We looked at the koshas on the first day. So many different frameworks we can analyze this from. The witness reigns supreme in all of these. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om